Greece's best regions to live, retire, and buy property in 2026. Most people who think about retiring in Europe land on the same shortlist. Portugal, Spain, maybe southern Italy. Greece comes up occasionally, usually attached to images of Santorini, whitewashed clifftop hotels, and prices that make your eyes water. And that association is understandable. The tourist version of Greece is genuinely expensive. But the tourist version of Greece is not the real Greece. The country has over 6,000 islands, a mainland that stretches from alpine north to sun-baked south, and regional cities where a retired couple can live comfortably on a budget that would barely cover rent in Lisbon. Property prices in certain regions still sit at levels that Western buyers find genuinely hard to believe. And Greece's residency pathways, including its Golden Visa program, remain among the most accessible in the European Union, even after recent threshold adjustments. The problem is that most relocation content lumps Greece into a single category, either the expensive postcard version or a vague "it's cheap in the countryside" wave of the hand. Neither is useful. What actually matters is which region suits your lifestyle, your budget, and your long-term goals. The answers vary considerably depending on where you land. In this video, we're breaking Greece down region by region, from the underrated north all the way to the islands most expats overlook, ending with the one region that offers the best overall package in 2026. And as you'll see, our top pick offers something the others genuinely can't match. Keep in mind, the figures presented here are approximations meant to give you a sense of the cost of living. Always verify with up-to-date sources before making any decisions. Without further ado, let's get into the list. Number 7. Northern Greece, covering the Macedonia and Thrace regions. This is Greece at its most overlooked. Sharing borders with Bulgaria, North Macedonia, and Turkey, the northern tier of the country feels a world away from the Aegean postcard. Thessaloniki, the region's capital and Greece's second-largest city, is a genuinely cosmopolitan place, with a Byzantine old town, a lively food scene built around meze and grilled meats, and a seafront promenade that local residents use daily rather than treat as a tourist attraction. Beyond Thessaloniki, smaller cities like Kavala, Xanthi, and Surs offer quiet, unhurried living in landscapes that range from forested mountain ranges to fertile river plains. The climate in the north is noticeably different from what most people picture when they think of Greece. Summers are hot and dry, but winters can be genuinely cold, with snowfall in the highlands and crisp temperatures even in Thessaloniki itself. For those coming from Northern Europe or Canada, that seasonal rhythm may feel familiar and even welcome. Cost of living here is among the lowest in the country. A couple renting a well-sized apartment in Thessaloniki might expect to pay somewhere in the range of $350 to $550 per month, with overall monthly budgets for comfortable living sitting in the $1,200 to $1,600 range. Property prices in the city remain considerably below Western European comparisons, and in smaller towns across the region, rural properties and village houses can still be found at prices that would be considered extraordinary in any other EU context. On the downside, the expat infrastructure in northern Greece is thin. English is less widely spoken outside Thessaloniki, and the international medical facilities that retirees often depend on are heavily concentrated in the capital. For self-sufficient retirees or remote workers comfortable with some language effort, that's manageable. For those who want a ready-built expat community from day one, it can feel isolating. Number 6. Epirus and Northwestern Greece. Epirus sits in the northwestern corner of the Greek mainland, pressed up against the Albanian border and the Ionian Sea to the west. It is, without question, one of the least touristed and most dramatically beautiful parts of the country. The Vikos Gorge, one of the deepest gorges in the world, cuts through the Zagori highlands here. Stone-built villages with slate roofs dot mountain valleys where winters are sharp and summers are mild by Greek standards. The region's main city, Ioannina, sits on the shore of Lake Pamvotis and has a functioning old bazaar, a lakeside fortress, and a surprisingly well-preserved Ottoman quarter that reflects the area's layered history. It is a university town, which keeps the energy reasonably active and the coffee shop culture genuinely strong. Monthly costs in Ioannina and the surrounding region are low. Rents for a decent apartment typically fall between $280 and $480 per month. Overall living costs for a single person or couple tend to run noticeably lower than the Greek national average, with many retirees reporting comfortable monthly budgets in the $1,100 to $1,500 range depending on lifestyle. Property in rural Epirus tells a particularly interesting story. Village houses in the Zagori area, some of them centuries-old stone structures, have been bought and carefully restored by foreign buyers over the past decade. Prices for unrenovated properties in smaller villages can still be found at relatively modest levels, though renovated showcase homes have climbed as the region's reputation has grown. The honest drawback here is the infrastructure gap. Healthcare options outside Ioannina are limited, road connections to the rest of Greece can be slow and winding, and the region is genuinely remote. Those who find that appealing, and many do, will be well served. Those who need reliable urban convenience will find it harder to manage. Number 5. The Peloponnese. The Peloponnese is the large peninsula that hangs below mainland Greece like a crooked hand, connected to the rest of the country by a narrow strip of land at Corinth. It is a region with extraordinary historical density. Ancient Olympia is here. So is Mycenae, Epidaurus, and the Byzantine ghost town of Mystras. For anyone with an interest in classical history, it is almost absurdly rich. But the Peloponnese is also a practical choice for retirees. The western coast around Kalamata has seen consistent interest from foreign buyers and relocators over the past several years. Kalamata itself, best known internationally for its olives, is a functional city with decent hospitals, a domestic airport, a long seafront promenade, and a pace of life that most arrivals find immediately agreeable. The climate is among the best in mainland Greece, with long mild winters and hot but breezy summers. Cost of living in Kalamata and the broader western Peloponnese is moderate by Greek standards. Rents for a comfortable two-bedroom apartment typically sit in the $400 to $650 range per month. Overall monthly costs for a couple living well tend to fall somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000. Property prices in Kalamata have risen in recent years as the region's profile has grown, but they remain considerably more accessible than anything comparable on the islands or in Athens. The broader Peloponnese, outside the main towns, still has pockets of genuinely affordable village property and agricultural land. Savvy buyers have already started picking through the Mani Peninsula in the south, a stark, tower-house landscape unlike anywhere else in Greece, where property values are climbing but still lag behind better-known coastal areas. The downside of the Peloponnese is connectivity. Kalamata has an airport, but flight options are seasonal and limited. Getting to Athens by road takes the better part of 3 hours. For those who travel frequently or value easy international access, that friction adds up over time. Number 4. Crete. Crete is Greece's largest island and, in many ways, its own country within a country. It has a distinct culture, a distinct dialect, a fierce local identity, and a landscape that ranges from snow-capped mountain ranges in the center to some of the finest beaches in the Mediterranean along its coastline. Heraklion, the island's capital, functions as a proper mid-sized European city, with a university, a regional hospital network, international flight connections, and a port that links it to Athens and beyond. For retirees and long-term residents, Crete offers a genuinely practical base. The island has one of the more established expat communities in Greece, concentrated particularly around Chania in the west and the villages of the Apokoronas region. Those communities have been building for decades and come with informal networks, English-speaking services, and the social infrastructure that eases the transition for new arrivals. Cost of living varies considerably by location. Chania city and its immediate surroundings sit at the higher end of the Cretan spectrum, with rents for a two-bedroom apartment ranging from roughly $500 to $800 per month in more desirable areas. The eastern half of the island, around Siscia and Hierapetra, is considerably more affordable, with overall monthly costs for a couple potentially sitting in the $1,400 to $1,800 range. Property on Crete follows a similar split. Prices in Chania and the popular Northwest have risen sharply over the past several years, driven by tourism investment and foreign buyer interest. In the east and in inland villages, values remain noticeably lower, and rural properties with land can still represent solid value by European standards. The honest caveat with Crete is the summer. The island's tourism economy brings intensity between June and September that affects prices, traffic, and general peace and quiet in coastal areas. Those living inland or in the eastern reaches feel it less, but in the popular tourist belts, July and August can test the patience of anyone seeking a quiet retirement pace. Number 3. The Ionian Islands. The Ionian Islands, strung down the western coast of Greece, are a different animal from the Aegean Islands most people picture. Corfu, Kefalonia, Zakynthos, Lefkada, and their smaller neighbors have a distinctly Venetian architectural character, lush green landscapes fed by higher annual rainfall, and a long history of cultural exchange with Western Europe that makes them feel more immediately familiar to British and Italian arrivals in particular. Corfu has one of the most established expat communities in Greece, with a British presence stretching back generations. That legacy means English is widely spoken, infrastructure for foreign residents is well developed, and the social life for new arrivals is relatively easy to plug into. Kefalonia, made famous internationally by the novel Captain Corelli's Mandolin, is somewhat quieter and arguably more beautiful, with dramatic cliffs, turquoise bays, and a scale that feels manageable. Cost of living in the Ionian sits in the mid-range for Greece. Rents vary considerably by island and by proximity to tourist zones, but a comfortable apartment outside the main resorts might run $400 to $700 per month. Overall monthly costs for a couple can sit anywhere from $1,500 to $2,200 depending on location and lifestyle choices. Property on the Ionian Islands has attracted consistent foreign buyer interest, particularly from the UK and Germany. Prices in Corfu's established villages and seafront areas have climbed notably over the past decade. Kefalonia and Lefkada offer better value at present, and smaller islands like Attica remain genuinely under the radar for buyers willing to accept a more remote lifestyle. The downside common to most Ionian islands is the winter. Tourism infrastructure closes down substantially between November and March, restaurants shutter, services thin out, and the social life that makes summer so appealing largely disappears. Full-time residents need to be comfortable with that quieter reality, and not everyone is. Number 2. Athens and the Attica region. Mention Athens to most retirees considering Greece and the reaction is mixed. It is a sprawling, chaotic, occasionally overwhelming city of around 3.5 million people. The traffic is real. The summer heat is serious. And certain parts of the urban center feel rough around the edges in ways that require an adjustment period. But Athens in 2026 is also a city in the middle of a genuine transformation. Neighborhoods like Koukaki, Monastiriki, Pangrati, and Exarchia have developed creative, walkable identities with independent coffee shops, restaurants, galleries, and an energy that younger relocators in particular find compelling. The city's infrastructure is functional, its metro system is clean and expanding, and its international airport gives direct connections to most major European hubs and beyond. For retirees, the practical case for Athens is strong. The public and private healthcare infrastructure is the best in the country. International schools, English language services, and consular support are all concentrated here. The cost of living, while higher than regional Greece, remains considerably lower than any comparable Western European capital. Rents for a good two-bedroom apartment in a desirable central neighborhood typically fall in the $700 to $1,200 range per month, while outer suburbs and the broader Attica region offer considerably lower options. Property investment in Athens deserves particular attention. The Golden Visa program, which grants EU residency in exchange for qualifying real estate investment, has its threshold set at €800,000 for high-demand zones including central Athens and Mykonos as of 2026. That is a meaningful jump from where the program started, and it places Athens' Golden Visa investment firmly in the premium bracket. However, in lower demand zones, the threshold remains at €400,000, and broader Attica outside the designated high-demand areas still falls into that lower tier for many property types. Those figures shift the calculus for buyers, but Athens' property as a long-term asset in an EU capital still attracts serious investor interest. The downside is straightforward. Athens is a city, with everything that entails. Noise, pollution in summer, urban density, and a cost premium relative to regional Greece are all real factors. For those who came to Greece specifically for the quiet coastline and village pace, Athens requires a genuine lifestyle compromise. Number 1. The Aegean Islands, specifically the Dodecanese and the less touristed eastern Cyclades. This is the region that earns the top spot, not for one single island, but for what the broader Aegean archipelago offers when you look past the famous names. Everyone knows Santorini and Mykonos. They are genuinely beautiful. They are also genuinely expensive, overrun with tourism infrastructure, and practically impossible to build a normal daily life around at reasonable cost. But the Aegean contains dozens of islands that operate on an entirely different level. The Dodecanese, the southern chain that includes Rhodes, Kos, Patmos, Symi, and Castellorizo, and the quieter Cycladic islands beyond the famous cluster, including Syros, Naxos, Milos, and Foligandros, offer something the tourist belt cannot. Start with Rhodes, the Dodecanese capital. It is a proper city, with a functioning hospital, a diverse economy, year-round flight connections, and a medieval old town that is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It has an established expat community, particularly among British and Scandinavian retirees, and the full range of services that makes daily life practical rather than romantic. Monthly costs for a couple living comfortably in Rhodes Town or the quieter western coast run in the $1,500 to $2,000 range, with rents for a solid two-bedroom apartment outside the old town sitting in the $450 to $750 region. Then consider the smaller Dodecanese islands, Symi, Tylos, Halki, and Castellorizo, each with tiny permanent populations, extraordinary architecture, and property markets that remain well below anything on the mainland. Castellorizo in particular, a tiny island just off the Turkish coast with a population measured in hundreds, has attracted a small but devoted community of foreign residents drawn by its remoteness, its photogenic harbour, and property prices that still represent extraordinary value by any Mediterranean comparison. On the Cycladic side, Naxos stands out as the most practical choice. The largest island in the chain, it has its own hospital, an airport, fertile agricultural land that keeps food costs low, and a year-round resident population that gives it a genuine community feel rather than a seasonal tourist character. Rents on Naxos outside the main town are modest, and property prices, while rising, remain considerably below Santorini and Mykonos levels. A couple can live genuinely well here for $1,600 to $2,000 a month. Syros, the administrative capital of the Cyclades, deserves specific mention. It is a functioning Greek city on an island, with courts, municipal offices, a hospital, and a preserved neoclassical town centre at Ermoupoli that reflects its history as one of the wealthiest ports in the 19th century Aegean. It has essentially no mass tourism infrastructure, which keeps prices stable and gives it a quiet, authentic character that is increasingly rare in the Cyclades. The residency angle matters here too. Greece's golden visa program, even at the adjusted thresholds, remains one of the more accessible EU residency by investment pathways for property buyers. In island areas outside the high-demand designated zones, the €400,000 threshold applies, and a qualifying purchase grants the buyer and their immediate family an EU residence permit, renewable every 5 years, with a path to permanent residency after 5 years of holding the visa. For non-EU buyers, that EU foothold is a meaningful part of the value calculation. The downside of island living is the same across the Aegean. Ferry dependency for supplies, medical emergencies, and regular travel creates logistical friction that those used to mainland connectivity can find genuinely frustrating. Winter on smaller islands means reduced services, limited social options, and a quiet that is either deeply restorative or oppressive depending on temperament. For larger islands like Rhodes and Naxos, those pressures are significantly reduced but never entirely absent. Before you sign on the dotted line on an island property, spending a full winter there first is the kind of practical step that separates people who thrive from those who retreat. And there you have it. 7 of Greece's most compelling regions for living, retiring, and buying property in 2026. From the overlooked north and the dramatic highlands of Epirus, through the historical richness of the Peloponnese, the established communities of Crete and the Ionians, the practical hub of Athens, and all the way to the Aegean archipelago where the best long-term value and the most distinctive Mediterranean lifestyle still genuinely coexist. Greece is a country that rewards those who look past the postcard. The regions on this list are the proof of that. If you found this useful, consider subscribing. We cover destinations like this every week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.